So I'll just start with what I think design is to get into the product talk. I'll just relate with an experience that I recently went through. So for most of my life, I've been out of the water, or to a greatest extent, I've been on the surface of the water, but I've never been inside water. And when I really went for a scuba diving experience recently, the reason that I found it to be extremely adventurous and extremely attractive was that I was put inside an environment where everything that I interacted with or saw was new. And starting from not being able to talk to people around you, to maintaining balance inside water, maintaining your buoyancy, everything was new. The life around me was new. There were a few colorful things, a few very beautiful creatures, some very intimidating as well. And interaction with such things was what made it adventurous to me. And I'll try to relate how product design has been a very similar interaction for me. So I'll tell you about how I got into product design, and from an engineering lab, how I took my product to an actual product which is used in an OT. So for the journey from a lab to OT, as you can all imagine, it started not in a lab, it started in an OT. Then I went back to the lab, and then I went to the OT again. So while studying engineering design at IIT Madras, I had been taking courses on biomedical design, and I wanted to make a product that was not only a prototype or not just a presentation that I do at the end of a course, but I actually wanted to see it translated into an actual product. So I went with a plastic surgeon in Chennai and stood in the OT to observe surgeries. And while doing that, he mentioned that his specialty was in stitching blood vessels together, which is an extremely complicated and specialized process which not many surgeons are able to do. And especially when he taught it to his junior surgeons, they found it very difficult to learn. There was a very steep learning curve. And those who did the training course, they necessarily did not take it further into the clinical practice. So we tried to find a solution of, firstly we tried to find what the problem was, and then we tried to find a solution for it. So what you see over here is called a microvascular clamp. It essentially stops the blood flow while the surgeon stitches the vessels together. A use case that you can see for this would be an amputation case, where the surgeon not only would stitch the bones together, but they would also have to join the blood vessels so that the tissue can get its oxygen. So there's a very simple device used over here, which is called a clamp. It is like a cloth drying clip. It has a spring in between. You push it from one end, put it on the vessel, and it will stop the blood over here. So this is how it is being used today. And what we figured, that when you stop the blood flow over here, the vessel no longer remains circular. And these vessels are 1 millimeter, 1.5 millimeter in diameter, extremely small. Surgeons operate under a microscope without any hand-eye coordination. And when you clamp the blood flow, the vessel collapses, it becomes even smaller. And to manipulate such a gooey structure with sharp tools is extremely difficult. For someone like me, I'm a little bit nervous. Even this much of a tremor would tear the vessel apart, and this would result in a failure of a surgery. So we identified that as the bottleneck in the surgical process, and made something that was that did not change the process of the surgery to a great extent, because surgeons would have to go through another learning curve if we change it. And we also wanted it to be aligned with their standard of with their learning. As Pratyusha had mentioned, people are not very keen to adapting to new things in healthcare especially. because then you would have to go to their senior surgeons who would have got into got learned things from their training, and then you would have to pass it on to the juniors. So what we made is that instead of a clamp with, so they also have to manipulate the vessel ends and, so this is how a usual clamp looks like. What we added to it was a third jaw. One second, yeah. So initially it had 4 jaws, now it has 3. But yeah, what this jaw does is that it holds the upper layer of the vessel. Vessel also has, like our skin, vessel also has hair-like structures on it. So surgeons usually trim it away just to make the site more clearer. But instead of trimming it away, we realized that we can actually use it to pull the vessel ends up so that the vessel looks somewhat like this instead of a collapsed structure. So now the surgeons can see where they are stitching, and when they know where they are stitching, there are lesser chances of error. They don't have to manipulate the vessel a lot. And this is a size you will also see when the prototype reaches you. So during this, while we did this, we received certain recognitions and awards and encouragement in terms of grants to develop this product further. As an engineer who had just graduated, I thought that okay, this looks like a metallic piece. Maybe I can make it in a year or so and start commercializing it. There's so much of encouragement around. So I started out by not taking a job, and I went into this full time. So the first thing when we are making a metallic product, it was to procure metal. And as you can see, the amount of metal that is used in this clamp, with different types of thicknesses of stainless steel, of surgically acceptable grades of steel, finding it in such a small quantity was the first challenge that we came to. That a metal supplier would say, आप 100 kg metal ले लो. What will I do with it? And neither did I have the funds for it. So starting from such small aspects, tackling such small struggles is what would be the journey of a product design. I'll just try to emphasize a bit more on what I have been through. So when we found the metal source, we had to these are some awards that we got. We had to develop our own tools because there was no ready-made solution available for this, and we developed our tools. We made the different components using metallic processes on metal, and eventually came up with a prototype that looked like this. We tried to weld it. It burnt the metal over here, and it also heated up the metal so much that it lost its springiness and certain metallic characteristics. So we tried applying glue to it. It did not work. It did not hold in the in the experiment. So these were certain challenges which prompted us to go deeper into it. We eventually ended up making our own device for micro welding because the place where we were in, it had a full-fledged lab. They wanted us to use it as a part of the incubation scheme and said that we have all the state-of-the-art instruments, but something like this wasn't available. So we had to come up with something that come up with our own device to make it, and then made something of this sort. And once we were able to make a prototype, we went to a surgeon's place and took a chicken from the market and tested it on the chicken vessel over here. So this was the very, very first chicken experiment that we had done using this product. So after that, we thought that, okay, now we have the first prototype, we should be able to hit the market soon. But no. So we had to go through several iterations of product design. These were the initial concepts. We tried to make different kinds of hooding mechanisms over here. We tried different serrations and different types of jaw patterns, and tried to prototype so many times, tested it so many times, and then eventually it took us 3 years to get the right funds, to get the right prototypes done, to get the right approvals, and after all of that, our sweat eventually met the blood, where this was the first human so this was the first human surgery with our clamps that was done sometime last year. And after that, we have been able to sell around 100 devices. throughout the world, and yeah, starting from India, of course. This was one of the success stories that we could see, that there was a patient in Vellore who had a thumb amputation due to a press machine injury. He was working as a manual laborer in an industry, and after that he could not find a surgeon in Vellore because the process was so specialized, and he had to travel all the way to Chennai, and by the time he reached there he had to lose his thumb. But the surgeons, being gods, as again Pratyusha mentioned, they took out one of his toes and put it in the place of the thumb, so that he could regain his manual skill and dexterity. Now he's back to his job and he has been earning as well. But yeah, this is the kind of work that our product does. It makes the process simpler so that more surgeons are able to do that. And with this, we also have an aim to reduce the number of preventable amputations that are there in India today. So yeah, this is one of the training course very recently, as in October 4th and 5th, it was conducted in Brazil, where there are a few microsurgeons over here getting trained on using our product. And yeah, we have been supported very generously by several large organizations, including the government and private sector people. And yeah, so if you want to know more about it, you can definitely talk to me. So I'll just keep it short.